Welcome to the Mojo Market Report. Here's your hosts, Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci.
To another episode of the Mojo Market Report right here on a Tuesday. It is Dave Sturchio. It is Chris Gueci, A5 Anthony behind the glass, coming to you from Chop Studios. And we had ourselves a fantastic game yesterday. One that, again, the way we looked at it on the surface, it looked like the Raiders were going to come to play, and they did. A couple things before we get to the meat and potatoes, or at least the top movers and what we want to talk about today. I know we made a joke about Tom Brady yesterday, but was he just upped? Did they just say hold my beer with one of the unnecessary roughness calls? This is getting out of control.
I don't
the
think
guy landed and he goes, and he actually put his hands out to brace his fall.
I don't think it was as bad as the Brady one, but it was still really bad.
Well, this is a strip sack.
And situationally, it was worse for that reason.
Strip sack,
that ended the game essentially, and luckily it didn't actually affect the outcome.
The Chiefs win the game, so then you can ha it off.
I thought it was pretty funny to hear Frank Clark try and be diplomatic in his press conference after the game. I was like, maybe try a different
he got
approach.
flagged 2 weeks ago for unsportsmanlike, cost them the game against the Colts. But look, the game, we all love football. That's why we're here on the Mojo Market Report. That's why we're here and we watch football every single day. But the game is dramatically changing, and it's upsetting to some, but it's going to prolong a lot of these younger quarterbacks' careers. Because you could hear it on the telecast and the broadcast last night. Troy Aikman wasn't having it. He was very upset about it, verbally
Tom Brady's
upset.
In his 38th year because you can't touch a quarterback.
Well, right, and these guys would have survived. Imagine if Aikman didn't get hit by Arrington the way he did. He would have played another year.
Another
or
year.
two.
Another game or two.
Yeah, another game or two. But anyway, so last night, look, we're well aware that Travis Kelce had himself a day, right? And so that's a guy we're going to definitely focus on in a little bit. There's other movers because of the fact that Mojo offered some serious multipliers right before the game last night. And man, oh man, I know you're sinking in your chair. You have that feeling of saying, I missed it. I missed the boat.
So what happens to me on Mondays typically is after a long weekend of just staring at my computer screen, capping games, doing info, research, and then Sundays with a Packer game that took me to my brink early in the morning. I was really running on fumes yesterday. So I leave the office, get ready to go watch the game, and I pass out. I wake up disoriented at kickoff, and I didn't get my multipliers in on Pat Mahomes. Don't be me. Don't be me. The free multipliers and missing out on that really.
Not only free multipliers, there's a 5 and there's a 10. There's a 15 last night.
So what I'm doing on guys like Mahomes is I'm all in long term.
Yeah, of course.
So this might be one of those situations that burn me for years to come.
Because those freebies
always thinking
are going to
I missed out on that multiplier on that day when he was at that price.
We're not the brass. We don't make the calls, but I will assume that there will be other opportunities to grab a multiplier on a Patrick Mahomes.
The truth is, if I'm in on Mahomes, I'm multiplying anyway. So I've said this in the
strategy.
past. Certain guys like Mahomes, I really have faith in over the course of his career. I'm in on Mahomes long term, and whether they're giving me a free multiplier or not, I'm multiplying Mahomes 15 times.
100%. So Mahomes goes 29 of 43, 292, 4 touchdowns to the already mentioned Travis Kelce. We'll get into him in a second. See, you see the movement is only 1%, right? It's 1.1% up, and you're like, that's nothing. But is for me and for everybody who took advantage of this, it's a 15% movement. So that's why these multipliers are so significant. And yes, inherited risk, we understand. If he has a dud, if you went short on either of these quarterbacks last night, I don't think you did very well. But
if you went short on Carr, we're going to get to Carr. I want to talk about Carr in a second because it's very interesting to me, the movement, in-game movement and things like that.
So in any event, Patrick Mahomes does what Patrick Mahomes does. I said it yesterday. I will do the old pat on the Batsky. I said, get in on this guy. He's going to go off. He's in prime time. He's going to light the scoreboard up, and he did. And he got himself not only a great game statistically, but also another win for the Chiefs, and they look to be one of the top dogs.
I don't know when it happened over the course of the last couple of weeks, but Pat Mahomes did pass Aaron Rodgers. Was he always second?
I want to say no. I want to say no, but I could be wrong on that one. But I want to say when you looked at those when we first got the app and we downloaded,
it was Brady Rodgers.
It was Brady Rodgers. Yeah, it had to have been. And look, if we're wrong, listen.
Hey, Pat Mahomes is that dude. So I'm not.
And the future, the bank value, everything about Patrick Mahomes right now has you thinking that he is the future Amazon stock of the Mojo Market
Isn't
Report.
Pat Mahomes like 26?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's very ridiculous.
Like we're talking about
just
Pat
how
Mahomes
young
like he's
he
a
is.
wily vet.
He's been there for a cup of
26
coffee.
years old.
It's incredible, and he's got a great coaching staff. The one thing I will say about Patrick Mahomes, and you can see it in the top movers on the scrolling on the bottom of your screen, and if you're on the app, I have to say this just because, and look, because it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Every single, I feel like, receiver or pass catcher outside of Marquez
Valdez Scantling.
Yeah, it's your boy. I'm like MVS. I've been so on MVS forever. But like his other receivers on that team, they just couldn't get going, and they're all down. I mean, the Chiefs' talent, skill position players were relatively down yesterday, but Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce have themselves a day. Flip side, you could have taken a 15% multiplier, a 15 times multiplier on a Derek Carr, but relatively, it's weird because he goes 19 for 30. And he throws for 241 yards, 2 touchdowns. By the way, him and Adams are finally catching their groove, which is really nice to see. If you're a Raiders fan, obviously. But here's where I ask you the question, Chris. You have a game similar. I mean, 50-yard difference. All right, 1 to 2 touchdown difference. So yeah, it's a bigger discrepancy. But when I looked at his numbers at the end of the game, Derek Carr was down. Explain that one to me after a decent showing on Monday Night Football.
Okay, well, he lost the game. That's for starters.
Well, there you go.
He lost a tight end potentially to an injury, which we're going to be talking tight ends today, but we are probably going to omit him because he did nothing. I see the stats, Anthony. Shout out to Anthony on the stats. Darren Waller, 2 series, 1 injury. I appreciate that, buddy. But yeah, the thing that I'm noticing about this is the in-game movement where you say, okay, I put a 15-time multiplier on Derek Carr. And then post-game, he's down a little bit. And you're like, well, he lit it up in the first half, but in the second half, he didn't do anything. A lot of those 240 yards passing, that was all in the first half.
Yeah.
And even in the mid-second quarter, the Raiders didn't really do much from that point on. And I think he got hurt a little bit with the pass interference calls, even though it helped the Raiders as a team. It took away 2 chunk plays of Devontae that would have given them an extra 60 yards in the passing game. It didn't matter in terms of what they did with the drives. They scored. But I want to point out a fact that when you're playing multipliers and you're looking to make money on that day, and we talk about players, if we're talking about a game preview, largely what we're talking about is player movement for that game.
Correct.
Almost in a DFS realm. Derek Carr at some point in the game yesterday, if you could notice, he spiked up.
Little spikeage.
So if you're looking to make money on the day of, you have to really stay on top of it, much like a day trader would during the day of the stock market. Mid-game, if you're sitting there and Derek Carr has 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, there's really no reason to wait for that to go down because as I've noticed throughout the course of the first couple weeks with Mojo, is that in-game movement, it typically, even if a guy does really, really well, as soon as the game ends, it kind of settles back down to earth a little bit. So there is that in-game peak that you kind of want to hit on. There's that sweet spot. And there's also a sweet spot in terms of an NFL career and a long-term play. And I'll talk about that later on in the week maybe. But I think that Derek Carr, you could have made a ton of money on Derek Carr yesterday with a 15-time multiplier, and you just trade him back.
By halftime.
By halftime, and you're good to go. So
halftime here.
Be mindful of that. Be mindful of that when you're seeing certain guys that shoot up, like a Derek Carr, because there's room for growth with Carr. And I do like him somewhat as a long-term play. I think he's going to outplay his value, or outplay his market projection. But yeah, in-game movement like that is very volatile with some of these guys, and catch it while it's hot in the second quarter in this case.
Yeah. All right, and one more, obviously, from last night is a guy having himself an incredible season so far. I mean, one of his best seasons of his career. It's probably a career year already for a Josh Jacobs. And last night, he gets the ball 21 times. He rushes for 154 yards and a touchdown. Guy, 7.3 yards per carry. The guy was busting off some big chunk runs. Right now, he's ranked 14th highest running back on Mojo. He's hovering, or he's at 1392, I believe, 91 over here. But what I'm saying is he's right around that. Joe Mixon is the next man up, right? And Joe Mixon is a whole $1 more. So, like, that's going to take a little bit, I think. It depends on what the situation is. But right behind a Josh Jacobs is a Kareem Hunt, who's clearly a supplemental back. So right now, I believe that Jacobs is solidified where he is. Nobody should pass him yet. But I feel like, and this is just based off a gut feeling, at the end of the year, we're talking about Josh Jacobs as a top 10 back in Mojo Market as far as overall share price.
There's definitely the potential
up.
for Jacobs to keep rising. If you look at his usage, there's none better. I feel like he's the most used back in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
I don't have the raw data on that, but Josh Jacobs, 2 weeks in a row against a tough test. Kansas City's defense against the run was third in the NFL in adjusted line yards. I believe third, definitely top 5. And the week before, it was Denver's defense that were saying, this is the biggest test for the Raiders' offense. Are they going to be able to run the ball? Well, they smashed it down Denver's throat. And in this game in particular, it was not the running game that cost him. It was the defense. Secondary, pass rush missing in the second half. Josh Jacobs is elite. He's trucking guys. He's just running with a crazy toughness that I haven't seen out of him in the last couple seasons. I think he's back fully healthy. I really wish that they didn't pour cold water on my Josh Jacobs take early in the year. There was news coming out all offseason that the Raiders didn't really like him. He's not a great fit. Zamir White. No. Josh Jacobs.
Pause. It's not going to happen. Josh Jacobs is the guy. And again, he has himself another big night in a losing effort. So the problem, and the best part is, Chris, if you've noticed, like when teams are down, right? When teams are down and they're trying to make their way into field goal range or whatever at the end of the game, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see a team start to throw the ball all over the place. They had confidence knowing that, like, all right, if we just give this ball to Josh, he's going to get a chunk play here, and we're going to get farther. And he was inches away from the two-point conversion, which I don't agree with the call, but analytics will tell you different. But I don't agree with the two-point conversion call, but he was right there.
I'm not calling a two-point conversion when I'm 1-3 in week 5 with a chance to end my season.
Do you think that's why he did it? Hey, we're 1-3. We gotta have it.
No,
I don't know.
I think
because you gotta stop the Kansas City offense regardless.
I think if you're 1-10, then you do it because there's really nothing to you either win or you lose. If you lose, there's consolation in the draft pick. But right now they're trying to salvage their season. I'm not having my season essentially end week 5 on one play. Now they have a really uphill battle. Like
they do.
1-4 is not easy to climb out.
It's not a place you want to be in. 5 weeks into the season, but again. The Raiders are looking good offensively. They're going to get things going, and it's just a matter of how much their defense plays well. But all right, so we were talking about Travis Kelce before, right? And we've been talking for the first 3 weeks of the Mojo Market Report. We talked quarterbacks, we talked running backs, we talked receivers. We haven't given any love to my favorite position in football, and that's the tight end. And I think that the tight end is one of those values that A, he's a safety net. B, his hands are usually, if you're a starting tight end in the league, you got secure hands, right? Obviously, one of my favorite.
Ingram.
Yeah, well, besides Evan Ingram from the Giants, what I want to say is like one of my favorite players in the world was, of all time, is Jason Witten of the Cowboys. One of the most reliable third down targets in the world. Third and Witten. Can't say he had any yak at all, but I will say that every time he caught it, he fell gracefully, and it was a great gain. So when you talk about the two top dogs right now, it's about conversating or having the conversation of, we saw what Kelce did last night, right? 7 catches, only 25 yards. So if you had any prop bets on yardage, sorry. But the guy always gets open, and he scores 4 times last night. So that's why Kelce is the top dog. And I texted you last night. I said, this is why Kelce is a cut above the rest right now. Because he's not a tight end in some regard. He is like literally one of the receivers for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the way he plays this game and where he lines up most of the time. But he's got 64 touchdowns in his career already. 64. Yeah. So he's getting a lot. And if you look at Travis Kelce, there's 100 catches in 2 seasons already, and right now on pace to do it a 3rd season. So he's getting a lot of volume towards himself. Now, the question is, who's next? Who is the next Travis Kelce? Who's the next guy that's going to take that leap into just this tight end? Like, I'm telling you, he's a legitimate cut above the rest. I think, what did I say?
It's like a full $10.
A full $10 more than Mark Andrews?
And when we're talking about...
Andrews isn't 2, right?
Yeah.
He is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then he's full $10 over Andrews, which is insane. Insane to me.
Is he 2?
I'm going to look right now
think
just
Zach
to
Ertz
confirm.
Is actually 2.
Yeah, because of the
Zach
bank value.
Ertz
and
is
stuff.
actually
Yeah.
2.
All right. So whatever the case, $10 above the next guy, which is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and we're talking about the tight end position. That's almost like 40% higher than the next guy.
Right.
Not just ignore the $10. That percentage is what we're after.
But Zach Ertz is 10 cents more than
Andrews.
So I was right there. I was right there. But in this regard, Mark Andrews seems to be just an incredible talent to have on this team. Now, if you look at their careers side by side, right, in which we have, of course, a wonderful graphic for this, Mark Andrews looks to me that this is a broader scale because it's their entire career. Like, if you look at this, ready for the similarities, Kelce started his career at $3.47. Andrews started his career as $3.73. So a very similar start. Now, over their career, Kelce's gone up 475%. So if you were able to, obviously Mojo wasn't around yet, but if you were able to grab Kelce on his rookie year, you'd be, have a yacht somewhere at this point. And then you have Mark Andrews, who you can grab at a decent rate. I mean, again, $3 to 17, he's up 318%. When you look at a guy like Mark Andrews and his career numbers, he's fed dramatically. However, down 11% in the last month, but his future value is $8.80 over the future projected numbers over at the Mojo app. His targets from game to game this year, 7, 11, 13, 5, and 10. So he's got 46 targets over the first 5 games, almost averaging 10 targets a game. 32 catches, 4 touchdowns. You see, I look at this you're looking at this as a career, Chris. And I know that's the deeper dive you did, but I'm looking at like, where's he going to go in the next 3 weeks? Like, how much movement can you find in the next month of football? And based off of what I found, Mark Andrews plays the Giants, who historically can't cover a tight end at all. And I talked about Jason Witten before; he can never cover him. Cleveland and Tampa. The last time he played the Giants, 10 targets. So Mark Andrews will be fed going forward. We all know this, but is he the next? Can he be the next Kelce?
Yeah, trying to identify the player that's going to be the next player is what I love to do.
I like that line.
So, Travis Kelce, if you bring back up the career arcs, Ant, you can see it's like the stairway to heaven. I love using that term because it's very similar to a Justin Herbert. You can see the off seasons are a nice little level out, and that's almost good when you have a really great player like that because you don't want any news in the off season. Those level off seasons and then a spike up. Level off season, spike up. It just looks to me like if you stretch out Mark Andrews' career over the next 8 years, 7 years, it's going to be very similar considering the situation he's in. The guy is a unit. He's the most athletic tight end in football, I think. I think he's more athletic than Kelce at this point. He's just a younger version. And the nature of the sport and where it's headed, where you're not allowed to touch guys, you're not allowed to hit receivers over the middle, it's going to prolong careers for receivers as well. Mark Andrews, he worked his way into an every down tight end. Early in his career, he was only in on passing downs, and now he's like a legit full-time guy. Last year, he was the #1 tight end in football. So you can make the case right now. I know everybody's got this. Travis Kelce, after yesterday, is the best guy in the league. I think Mark Andrews right now is tight end 1.
Really?
I really do. I think he's just the younger, more athletic, more talented guy. It's just that Kelce's in a situation where he's got a Super Bowl ring. He's got Pat Mahomes throwing him the ball. And if you see, nobody was even covering Travis Kelce last night on a lot of these touchdowns.
It was very, very odd.
And Pat Mahomes,
very odd.
I'm going to use Kelce's words here. Pat Mahomes is this generation's Houdini. What he does to defenses and manipulates them with his eyes and just the look-offs, he's second to none. Watch film on Mahomes if you're a young quarterback. I'm sure they are. But, yeah, I mean, Mark Andrews, to me, is the next version of a Kelce. We could say the catastrophic injury, but I feel like that's a given. Barring injury. Look, Mark Andrews is a pretty safe bet to me. The system that he's in, I think there's 0% chance they let Lamar go.
Well,
so Lamar's eventually going to get
just going to bring that up.
They're not going to let them. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, right. Did you see the fan, by the way, who brought in one of those big blank checks, like an actual blank check?
Good.
That's great. And it was like right in front of the owner. The owner like looked behind him. He's like, oh, all right.
I mean, Lamar played he didn't play great.
No, he didn't. But that's a big thing is for me, for these tight ends that we're going to go over today, it's all about security of who's throwing him the football. And Mark Andrews is about to be secure that Lamar Jackson's going to be the guy going forward. So, yes, I think Mark Andrews could be and will be the next Travis Kelce of the upper echelon, top dog of, or at least right there, of the tight end market.
Okay, so who's the next Mark Andrews?
Oh, no. You're right. Yeah, as we trickle down the tight ends. But seriously, staying on tight ends, I do want to talk about the guy that's above currently Mark Andrews, who we were just talking about, Zach Ertz. Now, if you look at Zach Ertz over this is his career as well. Started low, up high. Zach Ertz, the problem is with this, and this is the last 5 weeks, 4, 11, 10, 6, and 10. So he's got 41 targets over the first 5 weeks of football, only 28 catches. So while he's being targeted, sure, he's only catching half of the passes that are thrown to him. And I think that has a big to do with Kyler Murray. I know there's a lot of Kyler Murray stands out there and supporters. I'm not one of them. I don't think Kyler Murray is very accurate or good. I mean, yes, you will see a drop in a bucket here and there, and you're like, wow, look at that. But like me overall, I'm just like, I'm not in on Kyler Murray. So when I look at that, unfortunately, now that Zach Ertz has moved away from Philadelphia, which, by the way, if he would have stuck around and played with Jalen Hurts, that would have been a whole different story. And we'll talk about that guy in a second. But looking at the next 3 opponents for this guy, Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, Against Minnesota and Seattle, he averages 8 targets. So he will see some volume over the next couple weeks to maybe change my mind. But right now, I feel like Ertz has peaked, and it's only going to kind of level out and go down from here. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
So I think Ertz is just a really good player, and I think that's almost a type of tight end that I'm looking to identify in the bargain basement, and who's going to be the guy that steps into an everyday role, where he's pretty much getting the large share of the targets at the tight end position. And I'm a little worried. I have trepidation with Zach Ertz because of 2 reasons. One, for a season standpoint, he's not really lighting it up right now, and that's without DeAndre Hopkins in town. He's going to be back starting next week.
We're going to talk a little bit about DeAndre Hopkins. Nuke tomorrow.
So for that reason, I'm a little worried that he's going to see even less targets. There's always the chance that the attention gets taken off of him and goes to Hopkins, and then the coaching staff utilizes that fact and get him more involved. But I think that's a very small chance. And I want to talk about the future of his job in Arizona. They drafted Trey McBride.
They did.
Trey McBride, which we're not going to talk about him on in depth because he just hasn't done much, but that's definitely somebody that I'm earmarking for the future because they have a tight end that's very serviceable. They made a trade for him last year to try and push them over the top, and they still didn't see him as a long-term answer at tight end. Either that or they just really liked the position, and Trey McBride was the tight end 1 prospect coming out.
In that same breath, when you say like, okay, Arizona trades for this guy because they wanted to put the tight end position over the top, and then they realize what they have, and they realize, all right, maybe we'll address this in the draft. Flip side of that, as we're still talking about Zach Ertz, but you can't talk Zach Ertz without thinking about Dallas Goedert. Philadelphia traded away Zach Ertz and said, you know what? We got something here, and I think, just brushing over this real quick, I think Dallas Goedert, his quarterback security over there, playing with Jalen Hurts, and obviously everybody is high on Jalen Hurts right now. A tight end is a quarterback's best friend. Just keep your eye on Dallas Goedert as well. That's all I'll say about Dallas Goedert, because I think the tight end in Philadelphia is a primo position.
Offense.
Yes,
yes. I don't even know that they're pass happy, but they get it done.
Well,
they're score
it's
happy.
Not a right. Exactly. There's a volume
They're a
where it comes to
touchdown happy offense.
They're scoring points in bunches. All right, moving on to a guy that I just watched thoroughly the other day because I was watching the Cowboys and the Rams, and that's Tyler Higby. Now Higby is being fed a lot. When I look at Tyler Higby, his first 5 games, he's gotten 10 or more targets each game. So there you have it. And when you look at the Rams right now, they're the most frustrating offense in football outside of a la Cooper Kupp, who just eats no matter what. He gets the ball in his hands. He's gone off to the races. Tyler Higby is being targeted 3 out of the first 5 games, 10 or more targets. So he's obviously being looked for. No touchdowns yet. Rams are frustrating. His stock, though, is a good price to get in now, especially if he's the long-term solution at tight end for the Rams.
I have a little bit of hesitance getting in on Higby because the offense isn't playing well. If you look at a common denominator about what's going on with the offense this year, it's like Tyler Higby's more involved. That could be a problem. This is like one of those offenses.
Guys went out there and signed Allen Robinson to be a player.
Allen Robinson. I think Odell may or may not. I mean, there's a chance that Odell is a Ram, and you know what's going to happen if Odell goes to the Rams. He's going to get targets.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit less. I think the chance that Allen Robinson has like an uptick is there. I think Allen Robinson's not going to finish the season with 13 catches. I think he's going to have some games where he plays well, and it's not going to eat into Cooper Kupp's targets because he's getting 20 a game. There's a guy on the Rams that I'm looking at is like, I think he's playing a bit above his head right now, and it can come back down to earth. That said, he's proved me wrong so far this season because I wasn't in on him to begin with, and I'm still going to hold firm on that, but I'm swaying just a little bit. But for now, I'm gonna just sit and wait on a Higby and see how it plays out.
I got somebody that you might not want to sit and wait on because he's about to get better quarterback play in just a couple weeks, and we're talking about David Ninjoku. Now, David Ninjoku already has absolutely crushed it this year. He's looking a lot more svelte. He's looking like he's in good shape. He's healthy, and when he's on the field, Chris, he's one of the most dynamic players on that field. And if he stays healthy, you like that word, right? Dynamic. He's one of the most dynamic players. I'll just say it again. Why not hammer it home? But in reality, once this guy gets Deshaun Watson, and say what you will about Deshaun Watson and everything that you heard and read about and talked about for the last year, Deshaun Watson's value is way above.
Everyone's going to get an uptick in that offense when Deshaun Watson comes back.
And as long as this guy stays healthy, I'm in on David Ninjoku right now, especially sitting there at $7.77. That's very, very low to me. When you look at up top to Kelce, like this, you're telling me that Ninjoku can't find that volume? Because I think he can.
Yeah, and if the thing about Ninjoku, if you look at his graph, which it's up on the screen right now, he's very close to his entry level price point. You know, you look at where he came into the league, and then there was a lot of up and down injuries, this and that. And the word on him right now is that he's hurt. But you said he's not.
He's not.
He's not hurt.
He's not hurt. And in fact, it's just back that point up.
It surprised me.
Yeah, back that point up. In 2021, you're thinking like, oh man, he's so injury prone. Last year, he played 16 of 17 games. The year before that, you could say like, all right, there's a couple issues where he played 13 of 16 before they moved to a second. So that's a majority of the season. So as long as Njoku's on the field, he's fun to watch, man. He's fun to watch. All right, so then one of our favorite players from the earlier of this season is single-digit Gerald Everett. And for now, it looks like if he stays. Again, health is the name of the game here. We all know this. But like if he stays on the field, and what we saw last week was relatively bad on a Gerald Everett scale, blanking in some regards. Targets were low, but that game overall was just a weird one for the LA Chargers. Even Herbert wasn't really a hero. It was more of a run-first team last week with Eckler. So I'm not worried about like the immediate thing, but like we've noticed that Everett over the course of the first 5 weeks of the year is a completely different player than what he once was.
Yeah, he's in a good spot, and because he's in such a good spot and there's a lot of weapons around him, there's going to be games where he disappears a little bit, but he's still a tight end, so you can't expect the crazy amount of target shares, especially on that team, but he will get used in the red zone, and when Keenan Allen's banged up often, you're probably going to see a little uptick. I know he didn't play this past week, and it didn't matter. He got nothing, but usually that
He did tweet, though.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, I did. And usually that plays well when a receiver goes down. Everybody else sees an uptick, just not this past week. I'm still in on Gerald Everett just because he's wearing number 7 now.
Yeah, single-digit Everett. Gotta love it. And now, obviously, you said before the show, you didn't do it yet, but like as soon as we hit like stop record, it's like it's time to invest in a Kyle Pitts.
Yes.
So that's your gem right now. That's the guy that right now, if you look at Kyle Pitts, he's down. He's down significantly this season, but in regards to his career and his he is being projected. Market projections are extremely, extremely low, comparable to what we think might happen.
The market projections are really high, but the price point that you could get him at now.
That's what I meant. Yes.
The price point you could get him at now. Look, that's his career, right? So I'm looking at Kyle Pitt's career, and right now he's gone down since he's gotten into the league, and to me that blows my mind. I understand that a lot of his value is based on his future projections, so it's still very high, and understandably so, and here's why. He has 10 catches this year, right?
No, he's also missed a game.
He only has 1 career touchdown, right? So it's like, wow, what's going on with Kyle Pitts? Well, guess how many tight ends in their career have had 1,000 yards in their rookie season?
I don't know how many.
I think just 1.
Oh.
Guess who it is?
Oh. Who is it?
Kyle Pitts.
I knew it.
So Kyle Pitts does things that people aren't able to do at his position. I understand the usage is bad this year so far. Game 1, 84% of the snap count, 93, and then it went all the way down to 67 and 62. But as you saw last week, he was dealing with a little injury, and that probably cut into his production a little bit. But in the game 3, where he had 67% snap share, he had his best game of the season. I would like to see him see pay dirt a little bit more, but he's too talented of a player to keep down for too long. Eventually, they're going to have to start throwing the ball a little bit if they want to be competitive still. The running game has been lighting it up, so no reason to fix it, no reason to change it. But you got to imagine that Kyle Pitts eventually is going to come into his own. Second half last year, he annihilated opposing defenses. I expect that to continue.
But that was with Matt Ryan. Do you think there's a Mariota effect right now? Like, Mariota's not playing terrible, or also do you have like a little giddiness behind this investment if you're talking about a Ritter who's waiting?
Who was the tight end in Tennessee when Mariota was the starter? Was it Delaney Walker?
It was Delaney Walker, yeah.
There might even have been another one that is escaping me right now, but I don't
think... Frank Wycheck.
That's a little McNair action. But I don't want to... No. I think Mariota's going to be fine, and honestly, I think if anything happens, it's going to be Desmond Ritter. So maybe we see the young quarterback. I'm excited to see it. The young quarterback. We all know about the young, inexperienced quarterback's favorite target, the tight end.
Absolutely.
So if Ritter gets some burn, then I expect Kyle Pitts to go up.
All right. Speaking of somebody who's, I mean, we do this every week no matter what, but it's time to like deep dive, a little bargain basement action before we get out of here. And that's one Hayden Hurst, okay? Hayden Hurst right now, look at that price right now. $3.17. You know what I mean? And right now, over the first, he's down a little bit right now. He's kind of almost like a steady, as far as his usage is concerned, it doesn't alarm me at all because I know that last year, Joe Burrow got Uzama paid, right? So now you add another, I think, more talented receiver in Hayden Hurst. I say receiver, but you know what I'm talking about, tight end. Right now, Hayden Hurst is ranked 37th on the Mojo Market Report. Ready for the guys he's around? Right above him is the star known as Cade Otton from
Cade Otton.
Right. Like
Tampa?
Yeah, but it's like, okay. And behind him is Mo Alley Cox, who is just a touchdown splasher here and there. So we realize that Hayden Hurst right now on the surface doesn't look like the biggest, sexiest guy to invest in, but there's some good behind Hayden Hurst. Yeah, I mean,
right like Hayden Hurst right now, the only thing that's making me pump the brakes on Hayden Hurst is the fact that he doesn't have a long-term contract. But for that reason, I'm almost in on him for this year because a one-year prove-it deal at $3.5 million. They clearly didn't believe in him going into the year as like a long-term answer, but they gave him.
That's not a belief. I think it's just like we'll see.
Well, no, either way you look at it, they didn't believe in him enough to give him a long-term, multi-year deal, right?
Correct.
If they did, he would have gotten that. But because of that, he's playing better this season than he would have, I think. Because usually when guys get paid, they play a little bit worse.
I like him a lot.
I would imagine that with a young quarterback like Joe Burrow, losing his tight end last year, that they want to add some continuity to the position. And unless a blue chipper comes along or something comes along where they're able to level up, which I don't see that happening in the draft anytime soon because of where they're probably going to be picking and what their other team needs are. Mm-hmm. I think Hayden Hurst, the position he's in right now, his numbers aren't great, but he's still on pace to catch about 65 catches, 8 touchdowns. The yardage is a little low, but for a guy that we're trying to find out as like the next Gerald Everett, the next Tyler Higby, I think he's pegged as one of the guys. He's like starting tight end on an offense that he's not going to get a lot of targets, but he's going to get red zone usage because he has 2 touchdowns already, and he's going to get zero focus of the defense because you got T. Higgins, you got Jamar Chase, you got Joe Mixon. So Hayden Hurst is the forgotten man. But for that reason, you'll find him alone in the end zone often.
All right. I like it.
So bargain basement, Hayden Hurst.
I like it. I like it a lot. I like the conversation of tight ends. Like I said, my favorite position in the NFL. I think it's underappreciated, and I think guys like Travis Kelce are bringing that position right back to its right back to its rightful place as one of the top positions in the league. So as we get out of here, I do want to mention that you guys should absolutely follow us on all social media platforms right now across the board at Mojo, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Do it right now. There's a lot of insight. Join the Discord, which is a chat. I have to explain that to myself. Like, what exactly is Discord?
So right now, when Dave is explaining what Discord is, he's actually explaining it to himself because he doesn't know either.
Dave, go on the Discord and chat so you can chat with some of the experts. Also, I have to shout out our boy Luke, who does these Twitter Spaces every other night or every night. It's whenever he wants to, really. I think it's around 6 o'clock every night. It's a great conversation. Sometimes he grabs some big heavy hitters, guys, partners within Mojo that have done a phenomenal job, diving deep just like we do every day. Also, be sure to check out the entire podcast network, which, again, there's multiple shows on there. There's us. There's The Opening Bell. There's also Risers and Fallers. So the podcast network is growing at a rapid rate. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel, like the video, do all the stuff that you're supposed to do to a YouTube video. Drop a comment. Are we doing any good? Are we making you money? Are we losing you money? Tell us. We want to know. And, of course, all the bloggers and writers over at mojo.com, the Market Report online in written form. Believe it or not, yes, there is still written form stuff. You have to go over there and check that out. That's where there's like pages and pages of notes right now. I got a lot of it from mojo.com. So for Dave Sturchio, Chris Gueci, and of course A5 behind the glass, this has been another episode of the Mojo Market Report. We're going retro booming tomorrow. One more again. We'll see you guys in the morning.